So, okay, so, for our show today, we're going to talk about 2020, and we're going to talk about the pivot that you've been making in 2020, which is so very cool. But before we do that, let's go back in time a little bit. So share a little bit about your journey before 2020. Like what got you being a doctor in the first place? What was kind of that, what was your story that ultimately kind of got you moving that way? And then we can talk about how 2020 has been kind of a pivot point for you.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Arkansas in a small town named Pine Bluff. And my mom was a registered nurse and my dad was an OBGYN.
Okay. So how big is Pine Bluff?
It was probably about 60,000 population around then.
Wow.
So that's pretty small, compared to other cities in the area. I mean, in other areas. So I grew up there and I watched my parents run. My dad, he ran his solo practice as an OBGYN and he would run back and forth to the hospital. So I was like, I'm never going to do that. Right. And then
this is what we call foreshadowing.
Yes,
folks.
And at 14, he said maybe you can volunteer as a candy striper. So back then, they called the volunteers candy stripers.
Yeah.
So I went and they put me on the pediatric ward. So as soon as I got on the pediatric ward and saw the kids, I just have a natural love for kids. I said, I'm doing this. And that's kind of how I got my interest in becoming a doctor.
Yeah.
And so I just kept that going. And ended up going to college at Xavier University in New Orleans.
Yep.
It's just a really good school for if you're pre-medical and want to go to medical school. So I went there and they had like a pathway to get me where I wanted to be. And so after I graduated from Xavier, then I went back home to University of Arkansas Medical Science College of Medicine. So what happened was when I was at Xavier, my mom passed from breast cancer. So when I was a junior in high school, she showed me how to do a self-breast exam because she's a nurse. She was a nurse, so she showed me how to do one, and I actually found her lump.
Wow.
Yes, I saw when she lifted it up that she had some kind of abnormality on her skin, and so it was diagnosed like right after that.
Wow.
Yes. So it kind of like sparked, kept sparking my interest in medicine. Then I went to Xavier and she passed my junior year. But I ended up going on and taking the MCAT anyway. That's the medical college admissions test that you take. I took it the semester after she passed. And took it and ended up deciding to go back to Arkansas because I had a little sister and brother that were 7 and 9, about 7 and 9 when she died.
Yeah.
So I decided to go back to Arkansas to be close to home. So I get in medical school and my dad passed the first semester of medical school.
Wow. That must have been sudden.
It was sudden. He died from a heart attack. My mom died from breast cancer metastasis, and then my dad died from a heart attack 2 years later.
How old was Dad when he passed?
He was 56. My mom was 44.
Wow.
And so I ended up, with my family raising my little brother and sister.
While you're going to medical school?
They were 9 and 11.